Coming up on No Pulp, a lot of big games in the college football landscape this past weekend. We're going to get to all of them.
And you're facing Adam Cohen in the Juicer. I heard there are a lot of good takes that are going to be made.
I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of takes, Juicy Takes, new segment debuting here on No Pulp. We're excited for that one.
And our final words and plays of the week to come as well.
A lot to get to on this show. It's No Pulp, and it starts right now.
Kansas State has been on fire this year.
Missouri is one of the most fraudulent teams in college basketball.
And it was proved
They're not going to fire him. He's the best player in program history.
Side to Lawrence for the win! Yes! He got it!
She is the Shohei Ohtani of college softball.
This is a team that's potentially going to be a top 10 team in the country.
How you feeling? I'm excited to win the Juicer.
LSU has captured its very first national championship.
Hello and welcome inside our CitrusTV studios for this week's edition of No Pulp. Braden Reed here alongside Ethan Frank. And Ethan, what a week it was in college football. We're going to get right into it here on No Pulp. We got a lot to talk about today. So let's start things off in Seattle, where Washington took on Oregon. I think certainly the game of the year so far this year. Arguably, certainly the game of the week, arguably of the year so far. Number 7 Washington comes out over number 8 Oregon, 36-33, an absolute battle on Saturday. The Ducks erased an 11-point deficit to take the lead in the fourth quarter, and then chaos in the last few minutes. Washington gets stuffed on 4th and goal, then Oregon turns it over on downs near midfield. The Huskies score to take the lead. Ducks drive all the way down to set up a game-tying field goal and miss it. Pandemonium at Husky Stadium. Ethan, as a Chargers fan, I know you're a huge proponent of going for it on 4th down. Where are you at with Dan Lanning's decision late in that game to go for it?
Well, that was a lot. So let's take a deep breath and let's react. Yes, sure. I fully supported Dan Lanning going for it on that 4th down. When are you going to have a better opportunity to straight up win the football game? And this was definitely the game of the year. I agree with you on that. You look at the quarterback play in this game between Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. Just a really strong performance on both sides. Bo Nix completes 75% of his passes, throws for 337 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And then Michael Penix on the other side, over 300 yards once again, and only 4 touchdowns to that 1 interception. He was really impressive as well. I love going for it on that 4th down. Now the question for Washington is, coming out of this game, is can they sustain it? This has to be such an emotional high for the Huskies. How are they going to handle it? Look at who their schedule is to come. At USC, home against Utah, at Oregon State, versus Washington State. Those are teams they still have to play this season. I mean, that is a lot of challenges. The Pac-12 has proven to be very, very deep this season. I'm a little concerned about the sustainability models after such an emotional high like this, but it was a great football game.
Yeah, I think the Huskies will ride it for a little bit, but like you said, we're going to see very quickly whether or not they're legit in the college football playoff conversation. But going back to the 4th down decision, I agree with you. Dan Lanning, absolutely right. That's what this team pride themselves on. This is what Oregon wants to do. This is the culture that they've built. The issue that I had, though, was going back to the second quarter at the end of the first half when they had it 4th and goal with very little time left in the first half. Didn't take the points. I think it was 22-18 at that point. Washington was up. You had 3 points in your back pocket. If you don't get it there and there's more time on the clock, you pin Washington deep. But at halftime, Washington gets to go into the locker room, have all of that emotional momentum, and then comes out and forces an Oregon 3-and-out to start the second half. So that's where I would have taken the points. That was the 4th down decision that I disagreed with a little bit more. But to your point, end of the game, I thought it was the right move.
Dan Lanning, a very aggressive head coach in the Pac-12, has proven to be a chaos conference all year round. So let's go to what happened on Friday night between Colorado and Stanford. The Buffaloes up 29-0 at one point on the Cardinal, and Coach Prime's group lets it slip through their fingers in double overtime. What happened?
It was disappointing. I'll tell you what, though. I was in bed. I was asleep before this game even started.
I went to bed. Colorado was up 22-0.
They get started late, but I was in bed by 9:30. Already got a nice night of sleep. But I digress. Colorado, to answer your question, just could not run the ball in the second half to ice this game, right? They want to throw the ball. Shedeur Sanders, fantastic quarterback, aired it out, had over 400 yards, and 5 touchdowns in this game. But like I said, Colorado just couldn't salt the game away. 29-0 lead at the half, but you look at the rushing stats for the Buffaloes in this one. Shedeur only had 37 yards. Dylan Edwards only had 33 yards. Anthony Hankerson only had 25 yards. This offense, I think, is just a little bit too one-dimensional for them to be able to close out games because they were able to build the lead, but they just weren't able to sit on in the second half and salt it away. Stanford's able to take away the passing game, and Colorado wasn't able to run the time off the clock.
Yeah, I mean, if any coach can turn this around, it's probably Deion Sanders, but allowing 36 second-half points is a really tough pill to swallow. My only question for Deion Sanders is why did Travis Hunter play so many snaps off a serious injury? I think he played at least 60 snaps on both offense and defense, if not more. I feel like it's kind of, maybe should be easing a player back into a game like this. I know Stanford is not the most difficult opponent coming into this game. Colorado was a double-digit favorite. Why did Travis Hunter play so many snaps? We saw it at the end of the game where he kind of ran out of energy, and I just talked about Washington's schedule. How about Colorado's schedule? At UCLA, versus Oregon State, versus Arizona, at Washington State, at Utah. To be quite honest, I don't see a win there.
No, it's tough. It's certainly going to be tough for Colorado. It's been a fantastic story all season long. We're going to have to see how they kind of progress from this tough loss. So we'll come back to the Midwest now to a game that wasn't quite as close. Notre Dame crushes USC in South Bend 48-20. 3 picks in the first half for Caleb Williams, down 24-6 at the break. The Trojans just weren't able to recover. Ethan, did you see this coming at all for Notre Dame or USC? And for Williams, is his bid for back-to-back Heisman trophies in the toilet now?
Well, I'll answer your Notre Dame question first. And I think when the Fighting Irish lose 2 out of 3 games, you'd have to think that after 2 straight road games, they had lost the previous home game. This was a real chance for, this is the bounce back game for Notre Dame. And I don't know if I thought it was going to be to this extreme, but it was a pretty clear sign that, this will be a bounce back game for Notre Dame. In terms of Caleb Williams, I think he'd have to do something pretty spectacular to get back into the Heisman conversation. Sure. By no means is he out of it. He is the most talented and best player in all of college football. He will still likely be the #1 pick in the NFL draft in April. But I would say his chances of probably winning the Heisman are slim to none at this point.
I would agree. I like what you said about Notre Dame, too. That was a brutal stretch for them. I'm surprised they just showed so much dominance as they did in this game, but it was a good win for them. And USC, it feels like we saw this coming in a way. 28 points they allowed to San Jose State and Arizona State. They gave up 41 to Colorado and Arizona. They're trying to solve these problems through the transfer portal, but it's just not working. It felt like this loss was bound to happen when you're facing an offense like Notre Dame and then a defense like the Irishes as well. Because if you're able to shut down USC at all, their defense isn't going to be able to keep them in this game. So
Caleb Williams wasn't doing him any favors either.
Exactly right. So when he has a one bad game, presumed #1 overall pick, the best player we've seen in college football in forever, when he's not on his game, that defense just isn't able to sustain them in that game. And again, it feels like this is just the tip of the iceberg for USC. They got the brutal Pac-12 schedule to look forward to. This could get ugly really fast for the Trojans.
We've talked a lot about the Pac-12. Now we're talking a little bit about the Midwest. But how about the East Coast? North Carolina now into the top 10 after a big-time win over ACC foe Miami. We know what happened with the Hurricanes last week, and Mario Cristobal's decision to run the ball and not take a knee at the end of the game ends up costing the Hurricanes against Georgia Tech. But looking at this from a North Carolina perspective, how high do you see this team climbing the rankings?
This team could go far. I think they're going to go as far as Drake May takes them. It was kind of a pedestrian start to the year for him. I think coming into that Syracuse game, he only had 5 touchdowns and 4 picks. But I'll tell you what, they let Drake May get hot, and they should not have. 7 touchdowns in his 2 games since then. This is the Drake May we know, right? Coming into the year, the #2 quarterback behind Caleb Williams. All of the hype, obviously, all of the talent. Didn't have Tez Walker, but Tez Walker back in this game. 132 yards, 3 touchdowns. Caught touchdowns of 56 and 33 yards. It's the big play threat that the Tar Heels have kind of been missing. People will start talking about Drake May saying, after this really great game for him, after Caleb Williams, is there some butting of the heads there? Don't do that. Drake May is fantastic in his own right. Let's focus on him. He was fantastic in this game, and to answer your question, he's going to go as far as Drake May and UNC will go as far he takes.
I feel Miami was throwing a pretty big obstacle, having to play at Kenan Stadium, a night game after North Carolina had just blown out Syracuse. Miami coming off that extremely demoralizing loss. Yep. Really hard to rebound. It put up a good fight, but North Carolina just too talented. Mac Brown is doing such a good job developing the talent on this North Carolina roster. Drake May, I was talking to some people while we were down in North Carolina a couple weeks ago. I was talking to some people. There were questions Drake May was even going to be North Carolina's starting quarterback a couple of years ago.
Crazy.
And for him to be where he is now, that's a testament to Mac Brown and his coaching.
Absolutely. They've worked wonders with May, got him to be the second quarterback, presumably, in upcoming NFL draft. That'll do it for a recap of the big games around the nation this past weekend. We're going to hit a quick break here on No Pulp, but don't go anywhere. An exciting edition of The Juicer on the other side. Stay with us.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Here's your check.
Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Got it. No.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to No Pulp, and welcome to No Pulp, Adam Cohen. I bet when you were getting dressed at home, Adam, you probably were looking in the mirror being like, I look good. I look
Thank
good.
you.
I'm the
I
man.
appreciate
because
that.
you put on your navy suit with your white shirt, and then you walked into the studio and you're like, oh God, these guys are also wearing navy suits with white shirts, and we look like the disgusting brothers right now. Let's get into the juicer. I know you guys are easing with anticipation to get into your takes. So let's start with an overachieving team in college football. Braden, I'll start with you first. Who is your most overachieving team?
Well, we just talked about it a few minutes ago. I got to go with the Pac-12, and I'll start with Washington. I don't think anyone had the Huskies as the best team in this conference coming into the year throughout the postseason, but I think that just shows how many good teams there are inside this conference. For the conference as a whole, expectations were high coming into the season. 5 teams inside the top 25, and that success has been sustained, if not exceeded, which is a very tough thing to do with that many teams in the top 25. Now up to 6. There's been some surprises. Oregon, UCLA, USC, Oregon State, Utah in there. Even Washington State has played some good games as well. Arizona crushed Wazoo. Colorado's been the fantastic story. Stanford has crushed teams too. There's just a lot of teams in this conference making noise. With how bad it's been in years past to where it's at now, it's been a huge rise, and that's why I think they've overachieved this year.
Look, I grew up an Oregon fan. I am a Pac-12
Mariota guy?
I was a Pac-12 after dark kid, but I'm not taking the Pac-12. 1, you took them, and 2, I think the ACC is the most overachieving conference in college football right now. You look at Florida State, yes, they were probably looking to be national championship contenders coming in. They're the number 4 team in the country, and they are steamrolling opponents. UNC, they came in ranked in the low 20s. They're up to number 10 now. They've looked really good, and you're getting 2 surprises out of Louisville and Duke, and that's really incredible for a conference that isn't known to be a football powerhouse, and they've sort of had enough of their teams show up and show out, and that doesn't even include Clemson and Miami, who definitely have the talent to go far and sneak back into that top 25 and sneak back in a bowl season. Look, the pick of the Pac-12, I like that pick. The issue is I don't think that they're overachieving. I would say they are. I think you look at that conference and you say USC is underachieving right now.
All
right.
All right. We heard you about the ACC. We'll let him talk about the Pac-12.
I've got one thing. I'm actually going to talk about the ACC. You got to explain yourself for Clemson. What the heck has happened with the Tigers? This is a top 10 team preseason, and they're a disgusting team.
All right, we don't have time for cross-examination. We don't have time for cross-examination.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. I think, the ACC, but Louisville, Adam, just got absolutely shellacked by Pittsburgh.
Well, now you're allowed to cross-examine him?
And Duke, they seemed like they were for real, and then they lost pretty handily at home to Notre Dame. So I'm going with Braden and the Pac-12. It's a 1-0 lead for our resident host over here. Let's move to the other side of that equation, an underachieving conference. Adam, I'll start with you.
Underachieving conference, look no further than the Midwest and look no further than the Big Ten. Let's do a little exercise here. No, not jumping jacks. Take away Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State from that conference. I don't see...
The 3 best teams?
Yes, I'm aware, but I don't see past them any team that can win a bowl game. And I think that's a huge testament to the lack of depth in the Big Ten. The Big Ten West is a wasteland of mediocrity. It's a wasteland. Iowa is a good team, but they have absolutely no offense. They have a great defense. I'll give them that. And then you look, Northwestern's a mess. Purdue is a mess. Illinois is a mess. It's a disaster. It's a disaster in the Big Ten. And look, do I think that there will be teams that do make bowl games? Absolutely. It just happens when you go 6-6. But I still think, looking at the Big Ten coming into the season, they should have been a lot better than they actually are.
I've got some words on the Big Ten, but I have them further on in this segment, so we'll get back to them. I'm going with the SEC. They always say it just means more, but Does it this year? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. 3 teams in the top 5 to start this season: Georgia, Bama, and LSU. I could argue that none of them deserve to be in the top 5 right now. Georgia has let Auburn, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt hang around. Vanderbilt is the basement, the joke of the SEC, and they let them hang around this past week, and I think Michigan deserves that number 1 spot. Georgia's just hanging around because they've won the national championship 2 years in a row. 3 ranked games left for the Dogs, too. Ole Miss, Ole Mid, Mid-Zuri, Mid-Z, LS Mid. These teams have not done anything. SEC is the laughingstock of a conference, and it's disappointing compared to how good they've been in years past.
That's a whole lot of mid.
It is.
But I actually think that there might be more mid in the Big Ten. We don't even know if Penn State is good. Ohio State and Michigan.
Top 10 team in the country.
Ohio State and Michigan
I'll be at the Ohio State-Penn State game
might
this weekend.
really be the only 2 good teams in the conference. So at that point, we'll go to Adam for his take about the Big Ten. Let's go to the group of 5. You guys have talked about the big conferences a lot, but Braden, I'll start with you. The best group of 5 conference is?
I'm going out to the prairies, and I'm going with the Midwest. And I'm looking at Air Force, first and foremost. Number 22 team in the country, just snuck in the top 25 this week. They've been crushing their opponents. They're 17th in the nation in points per game, 9th in opponents' points per game. And you could say they have the group of 5 schedule. Sure, but they're just doing that with who they've played. Air Force in Wyoming just played a good one. Colorado State gave Colorado a scare just a few weeks ago in that huge rivalry game. Fresno State also receiving votes. They've been ranked throughout this season, too. There are some good teams, like I said, out there in the prairies, out there in the mountains. It's time we put some respect on them. There's always going to be a few teams in that conference hanging around the top 25, and I think that's why they're the best group of 5 conference.
Okay. I'm going to head back down to the Southeast that you just viciously trashed before. I think the Sun Belt is the best group of 5. No. The Sun Belt is the best group of 5 conference. And look, James Madison is undefeated. They have been trampling opponents all season. They have an offense that is scoring over 30 points per game and a defense that's giving up just a touch under 24 a game. Behind them, Georgia State, Texas State, and Troy are all really good programs this season. Troy has a suffocating defense. I just spoke about Iowa. Troy has a suffocating defense, giving up just a little bit over 17 points per game, and they've been able to beat opponents with that just incredible defense. Georgia State and Texas State are similarly built. Georgia State wins on the ground. They have an incredible rushing attack that averages over 180 yards per game. And Texas State has an offense that puts up over 38 points per game. You got to be able to run with them if you want to keep up. Behind those guys, Marshall is good, Georgia Southern is good, and Louisiana, go Ragin' Cajuns, they look great this season. So I think the Sun Belt isn't just a good conference, they're a deep conference, and that's how you win the best group of 5 for me.
That was a really strong argument, and Braden, you really said it yourself. It might not be the Mountain West, it might be the Midwest. So I'm going with Adam and the Sun Belt here on question number 3. Our guest takes a 2-1 lead. It's time for our 2-point final question. Adam, your chance to bring it all home. Which conference is most represented during bowl season?
So I just said that you trashed the SEC.
I did.
I think the SEC is the most represented during bowl season. I really do. So listen to this. Alabama, Georgia, and Missouri have all clinched bowl season. They've all got their requisite 6 wins. LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky are just a touch below with 5 wins. Okay, I think that they've got one more win on their schedule, especially because the SEC does a little cupcake week towards the end. So there's your freebie. After them, Auburn and Mississippi State are 3-3. Yes, I understand that they're mid.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, I understand that. But I have wins for Auburn against Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and New Mexico State. That's your requisite 6. And for Mississippi State, I think they beat Auburn, Arkansas, and University of Southern Mississippi to get their requisite. Past that, Texas A&M, 4-2, wins against South Carolina.
Jimbo?
Yeah, well, I do think he's got the talent. He's just got to put it together. But he's 4-2 right now. I think he gets 2 more wins on there. And guess what? That's 11 of 14 teams in the conference going to bowl season. That's almost an 80% clip. That's insanity.
All right, we've heard enough of your argument out of the SEC. Braden, go ahead.
I've already said my piece on the SEC, so I've got nothing else to say to you. I think you're overthinking it, and I'm going with the Big Ten. 4 teams eligible already. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, all top 10 teams in the country. They are fantastic. Iowa, too. You talked a lot of poo-poo on Iowa. I think this is a team that can go 11-1. You look at the rest of their schedule, it's not great. The Hawkeyes could stack some wins down the stretch this season. Maryland, Rutgers knocking on the door with 5 wins. Wisconsin on the door with 4. 7 teams really right there in this conference that could make it in. That's a good number. Northwestern, go Cats. Probably not, but hey, you're not going to bat 1,000 in this conference. More than half probably making it in for the Big Ten. That's a good number, and all of these teams are good, too. The SEC, Texas A&M, come on, you got to give me better teams than that. I think the Big Ten is a stronger case.
I'm not saying good. We're looking at teams that can make the bowls. They just got to win the requisite 6 games.
All right, gentlemen. Poo-poo for the Big Ten, more like woo-woo. The Big Ten will be the most represented conference during bowl season. Braden takes this round of the Juicer 3-2. Adam, we thank you for playing, and we hope to have you back soon. Coming up on No Pulp, we just heard a lot of juicy takes, but they're about to get a whole lot juicier. Stick with us here in our Citrus TV studio. We'll be right back.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Welcome back to No Pulp. Braden Reed with Ethan Frank. I'm fresh off a Juicer win. Huge for me. I think the first one in my entire life. I got to call my mom after the show and tell her. But it's time to put all that behind us. We've got a brand new segment to roll out for you here. Juicy Takes, Ethan. You alluded to it. As you may have seen over the weekend on our Citrus TV Sports Twitter, X account, whatever it is. We asked for your hottest takes. We wanted to know where our beloved audience is at so far this season. Our producers have picked out 3 of them. Ethan, I know, feels strongly about a few of these.
Yes, I do.
So let's get right into them. Here's the first one. Oklahoma coming off the big win 2 weekends ago against Texas. Number 6 in the country right now, the Sooners. Are they more deserving of a top 4 spot than current number 4, the Florida State Seminoles?
I'm not so sure about that, Braden. Florida State is a pretty good team in its own right. You talked about that win over LSU that Adam was mentioning at the beginning of the season. You look at the strength of schedule, Oklahoma 23rd, Florida State 24th. So really not that much of a difference. I know people are saying, oh, the Texas win, that's a really good win for Oklahoma, but Florida State has been dominant over the teams it's needed to be dominant to outside of Boston College, and that LSU win means a whole lot more than I think some of Oklahoma's lesser wins.
Absolutely. Now, the Texas win was big, but I think we're falling a little bit of victim to recency bias in this one. FSU barely escaped BC, but it happens. That's on the road. Those things will happen. Duke will be a big test. They played Notre Dame close. They beat Clemson as well. We'll start to see what the Noles, if they're legit or not. I don't want to take anything away from OU, though. Texas win was a classic. Dylan Gabriel's been playing fantastic for them all year long, but I think Florida State a little more deserving so far this year. We talked about Washington earlier, how big of a win that was for their program. The take is this on this one. Michael Penix for Heisman, and Washington will be in the college football playoff. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to get too carried away here because I might have a little bit more to say about Michael Penix, but I'll specifically focus on Washington in the college football playoff. That definitely could happen. You look at the strength of the Pac-12. We were talking about how good that conference is earlier. If Washington is able to come out of the Pac-12 as a one-loss Pac-12 champ or even an undefeated Pac-12 champ, the Pac-12 champion should definitely be in the college football playoff based on the way the conference is playing this year. The win over Oregon speaks volumes. I think it is definitely possible Washington could be in the college football playoff.
Yep, it's tough to pick against Michael Penix right now, too. Odds-on favorite to win the Heisman as of right now. I feel like that's a little bit rich, some disrespect to those guys a little bit below him, but Caleb Williams was just bad. As far as it goes for Washington, we talked about it earlier. We're going to find out really fast with this Pac-12 schedule whether or not they're legit, but we will see. Definitely a lot to watch down the stretch for Washington. Our final one for today is a Pennsylvania guy, myself. This one makes me smile. We need to be more high. People need to be talking about Penn State as a legit college football playoff team a little bit more.
I'm not so sure about that one either.
Come on.
To quote a good friend of mine, Vince, I just need to see a little bit more from Penn State. They could
UMass not doing it for you?
They could just be the ultimate fluffers. No, UMass is not doing it for me. If they are competitive against Ohio State this weekend, then I'll give them their flowers. But I need to see it from Penn State before I declare them to be in the college football playoff and a national title contender.
I would agree. Penn State, in general, gets to the middle of the season, they get through their non-con schedule, and then James Franklin really has just had a tough time winning these big games against Iowa, against Michigan, and against Ohio State. The one that I always come back to, 2017, when Saquon Barkley was at Penn State. They go to the shoe, number 2 in the country at that time, lose to Ohio State. That torpedoed their chances that year as well. So same thing as you. Need to see a little bit more from Penn State. This is their chance, though. This is a huge test. If they get it done, they are
Saturday
certainly
at noon. It'll be
square
really
in that conversation. Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt, can't get much better than that. One more break to go here on No Pulp, but stick around. Ethan and I will have our plays of the week and final words. We'll be right back here on No Pulp.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse,
Yes.
you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Closing up shop here on No Pulp. Just more things to get to. And Ethan, let's get right into them. Our plays of the week. A lot of big games this past weekend and a lot of big plays to get to. For mine, I'm going down south. I'm going to Tallahassee, Florida State, and Syracuse. And if you didn't know the name, Keon Coleman, you almost certainly do now. Look at this catch over the middle. Elevates over Jason Simmons Jr. Snags it on one hand. Go back and watch it here from the end zone view. A little bit of an overthrow by Jordan Travis, but what a catch by Keon Coleman. Everyone wants to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., how fantastic he's been all year long. I'll tell you what, though. Keon Coleman, NFL draft, watch out for the first round. Maybe not quite as good as the guy over at Ohio State, but certainly making his case that he's close in that discussion.
That was a really nice catch, Braden, but I'm going to go back to the Colorado-Stanford game from Friday night, and I'm going to look down because this guy, Alec Io-Manor, how about this catch over Travis Hunter in overtime with his team trailing by 7 points, a touchdown to end up tying this game, and then Stanford ends up holding on in double overtime for a 3-point win over Colorado. This catch over Travis Hunter, mentioned earlier how he might have played a few too many snaps and fatigue was setting in. This by Io-Manor may have been the difference in the entire game and a reason why Stanford was able to come out with a big win.
Now, for my final word, I just want to take a moment and appreciate the current state of college football. Kirk Herbstreit, after the Washington and Oregon game this past weekend, took a moment to step back and take it all in. Here's what Herbie had to say.
Look out at that scene. I mean, look at this. You don't get this. I do Thursday night NFL football, and I love it. But you do not get this unless it's a Saturday in college football. Look at this, man. And Michael Penix, good for you, battling through so much adversity. To have this moment for your team, being that leader, tremendous.
I agree. I haven't seen him on Monday either. There's nothing like the sport of college football.
That's what it's all about, right? And it's what makes this beautiful sport so wonderfully unique. It's been a bit of a whirlwind in the past decade plus of college football. The transition from the BCS to the current playoff format, the ensuing domination by the Alabamas, Clemson, and Georgias of the world, the craziness of NILs we've seen. But I look around the landscape now, this sport has never been in a better spot. Our good friend Ben Spector loves the P-word parity. When you look down the rankings, there's legitimately 8 or 10 teams that could win it all. The West Coast is back with the Pac-12. College football could not be in a better spot. It's probably going to get better. We have the 12-team playoff starting next year. All the conference realignment going to be fantastic these next few years.
For my final word, I want to talk about the Heisman race. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Michael Penix is the odds-on favorite right now to win the Heisman. America, I almost fell out of my chair when I opened up the FanDuel app, the unofficial sportsbook of Beat the Bookie. You should check out that show, by the way. And he was the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Would I understand if he was the favorite? Of course I would. He's been exceptional through 6 games. I even said he could do it on this very show. I'm looking at Washington. How about the performance by Michael Penix Jr.? Heisman alert maybe for Michael Penix Jr. And as good as he is, there's still so much football to be played. There are a lot of talented players around the nation. Think of guys like J.J. McCarthy, like other quarterbacks, Jordan Travis, Drake May, Dylan Gabriel, and there's still Caleb Williams, who we talked about earlier. He's the most talented player in the nation. Washington's remaining schedule, mentioned it earlier in the show, road games at teams like number 12 Oregon State, USC, hosting Utah, Washington State. There are so many different challenges for Washington this year for the Pac-12 title game in Las Vegas. If the Huskies lose only once or go undefeated, yes, Penix has a great chance to win the Heisman, but this thing is far from over.
That'll do it for us here on No Pulp. For Ethan Frank, I'm Braden Reed saying so long. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check us out on all of our social medias. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the games this weekend.